thank you for being here. I'd like to thank our Chief of Detectives, Rodney Harrison, for joining us in this important press conference regarding gun violence in northern Brooklyn. I also want to thank the rest of his team, which he'll introduce shortly, for also joining us and the great work they did on this case. Now, we're here to announce a significant takedown of two gangs that operate in the northern part of Brooklyn. The arrests and indictment involved 34 individuals who belong to two separate gangs. The indictment has 122 counts. We believe that these two gangs have been the source of much of the gun violence in parts of Brooklyn North, in particular in the Brownsville area of Brooklyn. We think that because this is such a significant investment of time and that these are such significant drivers of violent crime in northern Brooklyn, that we're going to see a measurable improvement in a reduction in gun violence in parts of Brooklyn. And you know, this indictment deals with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to possess weapons. There are attempted murder charges, there are robbery and reckless endangerment charges. There are other charges. But the case also covers 13 shootings that took place in the last 2 years in the northern sections of Brooklyn, where 9 people were wounded, including several innocent bystanders. It's a long-term investigation. The police recovered 16 firearms. I think you can see them here, some of the guns that were recovered as part of this investigation. And the two street gangs that I'm referring to in this case are called Wu and Cho. They're not familiar names to many New Yorkers, but they do drive a lot of the violence in this county. They're actually umbrella groups. Each consists of a number of other loosely affiliated gangs that work together to form Wu and Cho. And they come together basically to fight each other and to exert dominance of territory within their areas. Each organization does have its own territory in Brooklyn, and the two are basically engaged in a continuous state of warfare. You know, the theme is you shoot one of us, we'll shoot two of you. You humiliate one of us, we'll retaliate. That's been going on now for several years, and there's been an uptick in this sort of fighting between these two organizations. That is basically what gang warfare is about. It's senseless, it's dangerous, and oftentimes it's deadly. Now, by the grace of God, in this case, no one was killed in these 13 shootings we're talking about. But that doesn't make the conduct any less acceptable or any less serious. These were serious shootings with real victims. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. There's a lot of incidents. We're not going to talk about all of them right now. I'll just mention a few that are noteworthy. I think many of you may remember July 13th of 2018. People were leaving court. Some gang members had cases on in court here at 320 J Street in downtown Brooklyn. After court, they went over to the Fulton Mall area. They got involved in a physical altercation, and one gang member, who we allege is Equan Ware, acting in concert with fellow gang members, Jaheem Ware and Malik Himes, fired a gun and struck an alleged rival gang member. And they also hit and struck two innocent bystanders who happened just to be downtown shopping. Listen, this is in the middle of the afternoon in a busy commercial corridor, and I think it speaks to who these defendants are. They have no concerns for the lives of other people, and they are willing to risk and put anyone in danger who happens to be in the wrong place at the right time. In another incident, we allege that a man named Carlton Darby, who's a Cho member, fired multiple rounds at rival gang members on a basketball court near the Plaza housing complex in Brooklyn. One of the bullets that he fired at these rival gang members entered an apartment and entered a bedroom where 3 children reside. There were 2 children in the bedroom at that time, sleeping. The bullet struck and ricocheted off their bedpost, nearly striking these young babies. This is serious stuff. And we have to do everything in our power to make sure that doesn't happen in Brooklyn. This is disturbing because this is just rivals shooting at each other because that's what they want to do. They want to continuously fight each other. This is not about drug trade. This is not about something else. This is senseless violence. Two groups fighting another group. Now, one of the tactics that we also uncovered in this investigation is also disturbing. And in particular, we saw this with the Wu Gang. They tend to recruit, abuse, and utilize young women. They recruit them into the gang. They have the young girls carry their firearms, their handguns for them. They believe that the police are less likely to stop the young women. And even if the young women do get stopped and searched and the guns recovered on them, they believe they face less jail time because of the young age of these young girls and because they are women. And we've seen in these cases how they refer to these women. They call them holsters because they're there just to carry their guns. And they have these young women walk with them to rival gang territory with their guns so that they can use those guns when they want to use them. In this case, we did charge 3 young women in the case, but the exploitation of women did not end here. We also charged 2 Wu gang members with forcible rape. We allege that Taekwon Ellison had sexual relations with a 14-year-old girl with whom he often threatened and intimidated. On one occasion, he coerced her, forced her to have sex with a fellow gang member named Jaquan Wise. And we allege that that was done so he could enhance his own personal status in the gang. It gave him more standing that he could have a young woman have sex with a fellow gang member. That, again, was rape again. She's a 14-year-old young woman. It was a forcible rape. And it's appalling, it's degrading, it's criminal. So we've also charged defendant Ellison with human trafficking. Now I'm going to show you a few videos that basically will speak for themselves. They'll show you the brazenness of this gang violence that has permeated gang war in northern Brooklyn. The first one is from July 3rd, and it starts off as an attempted robbery. There's a group of Wu gang members who are trying to rob someone. I'm not going to get into the details, but we believe that they were trying to rob this person in order to get bail money for an incarcerated co-gang member. And you'll see in the video that the victim gets out of an elevator. The group follows him. One of the leaders of the robbery, Henry Gissentanner, tells some of the other gang members where to stay, and that includes Jaheim Wearigan, Tyshawn Stevens, and Tyrick Bradley. And when the victim walks by, they follow him. Defendant Gissentanner tries to take his bag. When the victim resists, Gissentanner shoots him twice, causing serious injuries. The next video is from I can't see the video, so yeah. So the next video is from August 11th, and it shows a man named Tyleek Candidate, who's a Cho member. He's shooting and wounding a rival. We also charge a fellow gang member, Brandon Waller, for his involvement in this shooting, and so let's play that video as well. And what you could see in this case is the victims in that case were going into their car, going into the trunk of the car when the shooting takes place. What's important to know is that the gun on that case was recovered. We have it here. This is one of the 16 guns that were recovered in this case, and we know that this is the gun used in the commission of that shooting based on ballistics evidence. Now, this guy, Talik Candidate, we allege he's one of the more prolific shooters in the Cho gang. We actually charged him in 4 shootings in this indictment. We're going to show you another video that took place on October 29th, 2018. What you'll see in the video when it plays is he's leaving an elevator. It's in his building. The police did a great job in going back and collecting video and following that video. And what we see is that he's wearing very distinctive clothing. You'll see it for yourself. And when he walks outside of the Tilden houses in Brooklyn, he's looking for a rival to shoot, we allege. And he goes by a group of men. You'll see 5 men talking and hanging out. And as he walks by, he turns around and begins to fire. Let's play the video. As you can see, there's nothing that causes this to happen, right? There's no dispute. There's nothing happening. He's not being picked on. He just, we believe this is just part of the continuous warfare. He recognizes rival gang members, and as he walks by, he decides that he's going to shoot them. Two of those 5 men were, in fact, shot as a result of the shooting. Now, if you engage in this kind of behavior, as we allege Talik Candidate did, eventually someone's going to retaliate against you. And we believe that in the next video you're going to see he's the intended target of that shooting. The gunman in that case is a man named Shan Mason. And this is a very interesting case because defendant Mason decided to record part of the encounter that he had and the shooting, and he's sort of narrating his own shooting, which is a very interesting piece of evidence that the police were able to recover. So you're going to be able to hear part of it, and you'll hear what we allege that's defendant Mason speaking about it. It's pretty remarkable to think that a person would commit this shooting and then sort of narrate it, maybe possibly to put on Facebook Live or to do something like that. But let's watch the video. There are a few things I want to point out. During this shooting, an innocent woman was actually hit in the head. Now, thank God it wasn't a serious injury. It was more of a graze wound, but she was struck in her head. And what you're going to see in the video is there's a man on the top part of the frame, and he's putting stuff or getting stuff out of a trunk of a car. That is the intended victim. That we believe is the defendant that's been charged in the prior incidents, Candidate, the intended target in this case. So he's there putting something in the car, getting something out of the trunk of the car, and if you look very carefully, you're going to see Shan Mason. He's on a scooter, like a kick scooter, and he's kind of going by. They make eye contact. You'll see that Mason continues to go on his scooter across the street away from the car, and then all of a sudden he turns around on foot and starts shooting at Candidate, who we believe is Candidate. We know that that shooting took place. You'll see the video. 4 shell casings were recovered from that incident. Let's play the video.
bro, so yesterday he was walking down with the guy. He wanted to show about stuff. He was walking. So I'm on the other side of the street, where my dad, the center. Then dude told him on the other side of the street, his stuff, and I was walking on my dog. Next thing you know, bro, right? He's in a truck, getting in a hard truck. I'm like, who did I stop? I looked at him, and it's not like, well, me and this piece of tape on the top. Just looking, praying, where my dad? Where my dad? We looked at each other, I turned over to the south side way. I turned around, he's back out. Boom, 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 he took 3. I got missing. I turned back around and said, hold on, he's wild. I left like 6. Chased him down, so now I do like 6. I hit the lady in the face, bang. I'm like,
Now, again, and the police were able to corroborate this shooting, not just from the video and the additional evidence we were able to get from his narration of this horrific crime, but we were also able to get the gun used in this shooting. Again, this is a very small handgun, fired 380 shell casings, and this was recovered from, the shell casings were recovered and matched to this firearm. So we know that this is the firearm that was used in that shooting. We could do that with many of these guns, but there's, like, again, too many incidents to talk about all of these. But I think because the video, it really puts some perspective about how brazen this shooting is. And I think his words speak for itself. I hit the lady in the face. His words evince really a complete disregard for human life. Which sadly characterizes many of the defendants that are a part of this long-term investigation. The culture here is very clear. It's a very tit-for-tat, and it's just upsetting, and it's violent, and it has to be curbed. And we're going to do everything on our part to make sure that the people of Brooklyn do not have to deal with this kind of random gun violence. There's no reason for it. It's mindless, and it puts our neighbors at risk. And as we've said in this case a couple times, I already told you, we've had innocent bystanders shot as a result of this. But that's not even enough, because he wants to continue brag about this shooting. There's some text messages that we recovered that he texted to a young lady. Now, this is Shan Mason again. He's texting a young girl. He mentions that his grandmother had died. And Mason says, I'm on the run. I clapped, meaning that he shot somebody. I don't care. She writes, WTF, what the F? And he calls the shooting real life and indicates it was in retaliation. She asked if the victim is dead. Nah, he just got shot in the shoulder. We also recovered a video of a victim from that shooting. Now, I want to show you, this is don't see the shooting. What you see in this case is a man laying on the ground being helped by some other friends of people who witnessed the shooting. He's shot, he can't get up. Defendant Shan Mason sends text messages to other people taking credit for the shooting, including the text message I just sent you. He also sends this video you're about to see, and he also sends pictures of the victim that the victim had posted of himself on Facebook. Let's play the video of the man who got shot.
I see it.
So when people ask, what takes so long to solve these cases are investigated bit by bit the evidence is collected, and then we can tie it together. And you know, we allege that Sharon Mason has taken complete credit for this shooting, based on sending messages to other people of not just this video and the text, but also of pictures of the victim who he claims he shot. So I think what I tried to do here was just give you a sample of the meticulous police work that was done in this case and how it allows us to charge additional crimes in cases that had not been solved before and add additional defendants to these cases. Our goal is to hold all of these folks accountable to the best of our ability and to just try to really curb and stop the mayhem that they're causing. I'm not going to accept this behavior in Brooklyn. My office will continue to work with the police department to solve all of these unsolved shootings. We're going to stem gun violence. We've had a number of gun takedowns recently. I think this is a particularly significant one because these are men who won't stop. These are men who are fighting each other for the sake of fighting each other, not because there's something that has happened between them. And so we're going to use all of our focused efforts to hold them accountable, get these guns off the streets, and prevent further acts of violence. And I'm confident that we will continue to do what has happened here in Brooklyn. We've continued over the last 3 years to reduce the number of shootings in this county. We've also reduced the number of people who've been killed in the county, and I predict that 2020 will do the same. We will continue to ensure the safety of families in this county. We will continue to strengthen community trust in our justice system. I want to thank the prosecutors from my office who helped put this 122 count indictment together, especially ADA's Iris Das and Martha Duffy, who worked tirelessly to put this case on and piece together pieces of evidence. And again, I want to thank the NYPD, especially the Brooklyn North Gang Squad, who did a superb investigation and will be responsible for helping drive down the violence in Brooklyn, but especially in Brownsville. And we're going to continue to work together to do these cases. We're going to hear now from Chief Harrison, who will take a few questions and then introduce his team. Thank you.
Mr. DA, I want to thank you for your partnership and continuing to keep Brooklyn a safe borough. So good morning, everybody. I stand here today as the Chief of Detectives, proud of my detectives' continue fight to keep crime down throughout the city. Today is another great example of how NYPD fights crime in the 21st century. This here, ladies and gentlemen, is precision policing. With me, our Deputy Inspector Mark Purcell to my right, Executive Officer of Brooklyn North Detectives, and Captain Matthew Bonparola, who was the commanding officer of Brooklyn North Gang Squad. And on Wednesday, January 29th, detectives from Brooklyn North Gang completed 2 long-term cases. We thank Senior Assistant District Attorney Iris Das of the Kings County District Attorney's Office Violent Criminal Enterprise Division for help putting this case together, identifying the subjects, and bringing them to justice. Both operations concentrated around the violence occurring preliminary in the 73rd Precinct in Brownsville, Marcus Garvey Village, Riverdale Towers, Tilden, and the Sethlow developments. Both operations focus on the gang-motivated violence between malicious groups who are sworn enemies and plague the borough of Brooklyn. One operation focused on the members of a violent gang, OMB 1800, 8 Trade Crips in Brownsville. There were 21 subjects indicted in regards to this case. This investigation covered 5 non-fatal shootings, 4 reckless endangerments, and 1 robbery. We recovered 17 grams of heroin, 9 firearms, and closed out those 10 violent cases. The other operation focused on members of the Folk Hood Stars, also in Brownsville. There were 13 subjects indicted in regards to this case. This investigation covered 8 non-fatal shootings, 5 reckless endangerments, and 1 felony assault. We recovered 3 firearms and closed out 14 violent cases. Through various investigative resources and debriefings, The case concluded with individuals being indicted with a range of charges stemming from attempted murder, rape, sex trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder in the second degree, conspiracy to possess a firearm in the fourth degree. Once again, I want to thank our law enforcement partners, the District Attorney's Office under the leadership of Eric Gonzalez, and thank you for your commitment to public safety, the detectives who work hard and dedication we are showcasing today, and finally, the members of the community who were patient and understanding throughout this process. As I stated before, the New York City detectives are the greatest detectives in the world. And if you engage in violence, we are committed to coming after you. I'd like to pass it over now to Captain Purcell.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning. I'd like to start by recognizing and congratulating my team at Detective Bureau Brooklyn North, including the entire Brooklyn North Gang Squad, and in particular, Captain Matthew Bomperola, Lieutenant Ryan Gillis, Sergeant Steve Zanka, Sergeant Patrick Socorro, Detective Mike Layson, and Detective John LaMariana for an outstanding job in seeing these cases through. Because of all the hard work and effort each of you displayed during the course of these investigations, New York City, and to narrow it down even further, Brooklyn, Brownsville, and its neighboring communities are much safer today. The community members who depend on the NYPD to keep them safe will, without a doubt, reap the benefits of what was achieved with these two cases. I would also like to recognize the Kings County District Attorney's Office, who have been closely working with us throughout the entire length of these investigations. They are true partners of ours, and these cases would not move forward if it were not for their partnership and cooperation. To District Attorney Gonzalez and his team, Assistant District Attorneys Aldine Jenis, John Sennett, Iris Das, and Martha Duffy, thank you. Job well done. The two case takedowns that we are here for today clearly illustrates the NYPD's commitment to precision policing. By focusing our efforts on individuals in our society who commit acts of violence, serious violence and crimes such as murders, shootings, rapes, robberies, felony assaults, and the like. Today, two violent crews, OMB under the WU umbrella and the Hood Star Folk Gang under the CHO umbrella, both with a home base in Brownsville, Brooklyn, are essentially dismantled, as many of their members will be facing justice for the serious crimes they've committed. To illustrate the seriousness of the crimes between these groups, grand jury indictments and arrest charges were obtained on 34 individuals associated with both groups for offenses such as conspiracy first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, rape, robbery, sex trafficking, reckless endangerment, and criminal possession of a weapon, to name a few. Also, I'd like to mention that during the course of this investigation, detectives were able to recover and seize a total of 16 firearms that were illegally possessed and or used by these gang members. I would like to make mention that these cases are still active cases and additional arrests are expected. I would also like to make mention that as we stand here, other cases just like this, involving other violent gang members all throughout Brooklyn, are active as well. Again, I would like to acknowledge and thank the personnel assigned to the Brooklyn North Gang Squad and the Kings County District Attorney's Office for all they have done with this case. Cases like these are not easy. They take a lot of effort, time, resources, and hard work. In closing, as I mentioned earlier, Brooklyn is safer today because of what was achieved by this group. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are any questions about the case that you want to ask the police department, feel free to do that now. Then Chief Harrison has to leave. So, yes.
What was the majority source of the weapons that were coming from?
The majority of the weapons were taken off of subjects in the street during street stops, car stops, etc.
But where did they come from originally? Are they from the South?
As the inspector said earlier, this is still an ongoing investigation. We're still working to try and find out this information, as we are, unsure exactly where they're being purchased from and being transported from, but the investigation is still ongoing at this time.
But as you know, nearly 80% of the guns that we collect in New York City, their origins are from down south. I mean, I'm sure that that's going to be consistent as these guns are further traced.
Chief, yesterday the NYPD had to announce that the crime stats for the month of January were up dramatically. It was included. No, do with the fact that they said that there were a lot of shootings in northern Brooklyn. I wonder if the fact that there's this takedown, if you agree that this will have some effect on the crime stats because of the takedown of these two gangs.
So, Marcia, I don't really get so caught up in crime statistics at this time. I will say this. Precision policing is such a way for us being able to stop the violence, especially in some of our troubled neighborhoods. The great work that Brooklyn North Gang did in identifying the individuals that were committing the violence, working with the district attorney's office, I think is absolutely remarkable. So it could only be an assistance to bring down some of the violence that we've seen over the recent months.
So Chief, could you describe the process of precision policing? How does it work in a case like this? What are you looking at, and how do you start identifying people? Obviously you have video, but how does it work?
So I'm going to pass a little bit of the investigation steps over to the gang executives. But just to let you know, we identify the individuals that are ahead of the snake, the ones that are causing the problems, the ones that are pulling the triggers, the ones that are committing the violence. Those are the ones we're targeting. Those are the ones we're trying to bring them into custody and working with the district attorney's office, catching them in acts of violence, making sure we're investigating them thoroughly, is precision policing at its finest. And as you see with the great work that's being done, the guns that are sitting here in front of you shows the success that happens in a lot of these cases. And this is not the only one. We're doing it throughout the city.
And do we have the image of Equan Ware? And so most of the participants in this indictment have been apprehended. Equan Ware is one of the involved parties from the shooting that took place downtown Brooklyn on Fulton Street. He is out on a warrant. We have a state warrant for him. The FBI, on an unrelated case that the FBI is working on, also has a warrant. So I encourage anyone who has information about his whereabouts to reach out to the police department, 1-800-TIPS, or just call the precinct and let them know about his whereabouts. But he has two warrants, a state warrant and a federal FBI warrant. Yes.
Is it your impression that there are still gang members out there that belong to these groups, or have you pretty much scooped up all the people that you think are involved?
Well, we never arrest everyone who's affiliated with a gang. It's just not a practical way of proceeding. You have to have evidence against them. These are the people who we believe we can prove a case against in a court of law, and we believe that these are the most prolific drivers of violence, and we believe that by arresting these individuals, violence will go down in the Brownsville area. Yes?
Well, I also wanted to know a little bit more about the investigation, just how you do go about identifying these suspects. So was it Facebook surveillance? Was it, are they in the gang database also?
So I'll take that. So if you don't mind, there's a lot of investigative steps that we conduct that I don't want to give away our technique. So if you don't mind, there's certain things that we do. I will reassure everybody here in the room, the individuals that are committing the violent acts, we find ways to build cases against you, indict you for these acts of violence, and make sure charges are brought up against you. Okay.
Can you say if they were in the gang database?
The majority of the members indicted in this case were self-admitted members of these gangs. And we've seen that through YouTube videos and other methods of social media.
Eric, was there any financial motive here with these gangs as far as dealing drugs or any other outside activity, or do they extort people, or do they exist just to fight each other?
Well, I think the way the gang war works, it's really just territorial dominance and sort of bragging rights, one gang versus another. One of the gangs was involved in some drugs, but we don't believe the shootings were related to drug dealing. It's just one of the gangs was involved in drugs. And as we've seen continuously as a trend in terms of how gangs finance themselves, a lot of them tend to be, and in this case, some of the folks we believe were involved in different kind of financial frauds. So whether it's opening up bank accounts, that fake checks or credit card fraud, I'm not going to get into it because that part has not been charged, but we continuously see that gangs are moving away from sort of traditional drug dealing and getting into this lucrative fraud business.
As a prosecutor, when you saw these videos of people just shooting each other for the sake of it, what was your reaction?
Listen, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking in a number of these cases. These are people who belong to other people. These are family members of other people. And we were fortunate that this indictment did not have any homicides, but we know that the violence impacts generations. And what happens is not only does it impact the family members, it causes further retaliation. So we have to stop these shootings. In part, we know that part of the reason that this war has been going on is for something that happened years and years ago that continued to be a source of motivation as retaliation for someone else who had been killed many, many years ago. So I'm not going to get into the specifics, but the retaliation continues. It's generational. It's generational, and it's ongoing. But it's also scary, right? Because it's like you said, like we indicated, one woman was shot in her head. There were 2 people shot right downtown Brooklyn. There were also innocent bystanders, but even the non-innocent folks, people who were involved, their families still suffer when these incidents happen. And so what it means to me as the DA is my solemn obligation to keep people safe. These cases are important in doing that.
The woman who was shot in her head, what happened to her?
She's okay, but I'm sure she's dealing with a lot of trauma, and we're not going to say more about her, but it was a nasty graze wound. Yes.
Specific about the Queens, the shooting in October of 2018. Was that a girl who was shot in the Tilden houses?
No, that one was
There
the,
were 2 shots, right? Or which the victims were?
in the Tilden houses, there were 2 men shot.
2 men, okay, thanks.
Can I just ask you a question about bail reform? Yesterday when they talked about...
Well, let's let the police leave.
Take other conversation?
Sure.